Hey, Cleveland, this is Tristan Thompson of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and you're listening to Sports Fix.
So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE.
Hey guys, J-Rocc here from the Sports Fix, and we always talking about using our platform to try to help the world and the society we live in, and everywhere I go and everywhere we go, bullying is one of the problems in today's society. There's nothing worse than any person, big or small, strong or weak, adult or child, feeling picked on, pushed around, vulnerable, and victimized at the hands of a bully. Change comes one person at a time, and my good friends at No Such Thing as a Bully are working on skills and techniques and ways that we can all change and make things better for everyone. Find out more at nosuchthingasabully.com.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
And away we go, off and running with this midweek Hump Day edition of the Sports Fix. J-Rocc back in the saddle again, welcoming you guys in. Thank you for joining us here and getting the thing going. Thank God we are here again, another day to do this. And again, I thank you guys for being here as we crack the mics and get ready to roll. Hell, the Indians are getting ready to crack the bats and get ready to roll at the same time. They never take us into consideration when they schedule those 12 o'clock games, 12:10 or whatever it is to be exact. So we'll make sure, for those of you that are listening to us live, we'll make sure to hit you with the updates of the game as we go through and talk about it. The Indians trying to salvage something here from the Detroit Tigers. We're going to talk about last night's game was just a perfect microcosm of the Indians, especially when it comes to playing against the Tigers, man. I mean, everything rocking and rolling, you know. Matter of fact, well, I'll tell the story in a minute, but I made a comment right before the game got away. I mean, I'm sitting there, yes, I'll get into it in a minute. We'll talk Indians here. We're talking some Cavs as they get started with their offseason. Browns continue moving towards training camp, bringing on a new body, Terrell Pryor, who is instantly, they think, the second best quarterback they may have in camp. But we're going to talk about all of that stuff. We've got Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland joining us here. As I said, we're going to real-time update you on the Indians game as well. We'll talk about all kinds of things. Pete Rose back in the news. Did you guys get a chance to see that? Is now apparently the cover blown off of the last bastion of what he was hanging on to there to try to get himself reinstated. We're going to get into all of that, you guys. We're going to crack the phones, do the thing like only we can do it here. Hump Day edition of the Sports Fix. I'm ready. I don't know about you. Are you ready? Then let's do it. Let's launch today's edition of the Sports Fix. Welcoming you guys, whether you're listening live on TuneIn's radio app worldwide, on Spreaker, on Mixler, their respective digital and mobile apps. Perhaps you're enjoying the show live on the home base, thesportsfix.net, your one-stop shop for all things Cleveland sports and Sports Fix. However you're doing it, thank you guys so much for being here and joining the show. Or perhaps you're one of the thousands and thousands around the world, 24/7 on digital delay, enjoying the show on iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud. However you're enjoying the show, thank you guys so much for doing the thing, for being here and getting your fix. And as I say all the time, you got to do that. Be a part of the show. Get your fix. Crack the phones. They're open now. 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. The number to call. Phones are open. Facebook and Twitter. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix CLE. Email us thesportsfix at AOL.com, Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at thesportsfixCLE. Email us, thesportsfix at AOL.com. I got a little hostile there. Things collapsing around me here as we get the show going, but that's okay. We got through the intros. We're on the air, live radio. You've got to love it when things are flying at you by the seat of your pants and you make it go. Guys, I already got calls here on the phones. We're going to get into it. Before I dive into anything, quickly wanted to start things off and tell you guys I'm pretty stoked. Got the details ironed out yesterday. Monday, this coming Monday, the 29th of June, very special edition of the Sports Fix coming your way, guys, as my man, the sports writer extraordinaire, Jonathan Knight, he's going to be here in the house with us live in studio talking about his brand new book, The Making of Major League, the just a bit inside look at the classic baseball comedy. While he is making his tour, he's going to hit all of the media outlets here in Cleveland, and he's going to stop in studio. JK is going to be here. It's been, I think he was reminding me the other day, it's been probably 4 years or so since JK's been in studio live with me here. We're usually doing the phone call thing every week, so can't wait for that. You guys will be able to, with JK being in studio, we'll be able to keep the phone lines open and interact with you guys, take some phone calls and all of that. Should be a lot of fun. Can't wait for Monday, June 29th, this coming Monday. What a way to start off next week and end the month of June. Jonathan Knight, in-house, live and in person, in the studio, joining us. Going to be a lot of fun coming up here this Monday. A lot of fun, but that does not describe the Cleveland Indians last night. And then I was going to say here, I said I wanted to get in through the introductions and then get back into it. Last night, my son had a baseball game, one of his little league games, so went and watched that, and he got the victory. He got the Duke last night, unlike the Indians, and got to the house afterwards and just getting ready to relax, toss the game on, and at the time that I joined the Indians game last night, it was the fifth inning. I swear, you couldn't have timed it any worse or better, depending on how you want to put it, than I did yesterday. Tied at 1, fifth inning. I made the mistake, you know the famous last words every time, should have just kept those words in your mouth. I did that yesterday. 1-1, fifth inning, watching the game, look over at my son and I go, wow. I said, it's the fifth inning and the Indians have not lost yet with the Tigers. And I was being tongue-in-cheek because so quickly they're blown out of the box, as we see, before they even get moving. They're blown out of the box. I mean, we know what the Tigers have done to the Indians so far. But, man, last night was the perfect example, a microcosm of what's wrong when these two teams play, the fragile mindset of the Cleveland Indians here. I mean, from a bouncer back up the mound, should have been 1, possibly 2, get you out of the whole deal, no harm, no foul. Danny Salazar unable to make the defensive play, and you could have easily predicted. You didn't need to be Nostradamus or Karnak the Great to see where that inning was going to go from there. It was the traditional baseball axiom of give a team an extra out or two, and they're going to take advantage of it, especially a team like the Tigers. What happens next? 2-run hit. Next thing you know, it's a runaway train, to use that. Don't want to use that phrase there, but if we're going to go into it, it became the runaway train, and the Indians were done. They were toast. I mean, David Price, we've talked about his success against the Indians traditionally as it is, but they were toast at that point after that inning, and I mean, you just watched it go down, watched the thing implode, and then Detroit, who does not need any help as it is, goes and makes it happen, and that's the end of it. A 6th run, 5th inning for the Detroit Tigers puts a seal solid on this one, and the Indians add a couple in the 9th just to make the score a little bit closer, but they fall 7-3. Salazar gets the loss, and I mean, and here's the thing, is The Indians, they lose another one at home. They're now 14-23 at Progressive Field. But what is the most concerning thing to me is I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that the season's over. I know how much season is left to play. What is scaring me is the fact that, and as a matter of fact, Zach Meisel, he does some great stuff with MLB.com. He does some stuff with the PD and some different things with the Indians website. Good stuff, man. And, I was reading this morning a nice piece about it's the reality of it. Yes, there's plenty of opportunity, plenty of season left for these Indians to go out here. And baseball, the American League as a whole, the American League Central in general, nobody's running away with nothing out here. And the Indians have been unable to take advantage, with the exception of that incredibly hot run, the final 14 or 15 games there, bridging the end of May and the beginning of June. With the exception of that streak, with the big long streak, the Tribe has only won back-to-back games twice this whole season. That is the definition of inconsistent. And I mean, you can want and wish and hope for things to get better, and I do for sure. They've got the ability, and they've got Jason Kipnis on fire, which is one of the points I wanted to make. That's what's scaring me the most, is that the Indians are scuffling along here throughout the month of June and sliding right back into the abyss that they tried to climb out of, but they're doing it while Jason Kipnis is doing some otherworldly stuff. 4 more hits yesterday. He's leading the American League in batting. He's hit safely in 27 straight games at home, 18 straight in general. It's his career best hitting streak. He's got the longest streak by any player in Progressive Field in years, since 2009. He's got an unbelievable run. In this 27-game home hitting streak, he's hitting .505. It's over 500. 53 for 105 during his 27-game home hitting streak. It is the second longest home hitting streak in Cleveland Indians history, if you can believe that one, and there's still 2 more to go. Miguel DeLone from July 6th to August 31st, 1980. There's a legendary Tribe name, not. And, of course, Hal Trosky has the 31-game home hitting streak that went from May through August of 1936, and that's it. And then Jason Kipnis would sit atop the longest hitting streaks, period, in Cleveland Indians history, but he's not just doing great. He's not just having a run. He's doing otherworldly stuff. And the Indians are still unable to capitalize on that. And what's scaring me the most is what happens if Jason Kipnis goes cold. Oh, my goodness. Could you imagine the lack of functionality in this offense right now? I mean, that's the scary thing. And again, so much season left to go. But are you able to are you going to turn it around? Are you able to turn it around, or are you just going to play, a second half of up and down ball? And that's a waste, first off, with what this team, I think, had the ability to do. And there's some people that might argue the otherwise, but in general, yes, I do believe there's some deficiencies in this squad, but they're more than the sum of what they're doing right now. That's for sure. Here's another one to put into perspective what Jason Kipnis is doing. He's got 98 hits now after notching 4 more yesterday. 98 hits through the first 70 games, the most by an Indians hitter at that point since Kenny Lofton in 1994, when Kenny Lofton had 106 hits in the first 70 games of that 1994 season when they opened up Progressive Field. I mean, that'll kind of put into perspective how hot and how nobody else in that long history has done. Think of all the greats that have come through, the great hitting streaks, the great offensive teams and players that they've had in that whole, just the Progressive Field era. And Jason Kipnis is putting himself atop all of those. And I mean, obviously in different categories, but still. And that is what's scaring me, is that is all that's keeping the Indians at the level they've been at offensively. And that's otherworldly. You cannot expect a guy to keep that up. And then, of course, the way this season has gone for the Indians, he'll fall and get into a little cold streak just as somebody else warms up, because that's been the other thing too, inability to get anything going. Ryan Rayburn chipped in a little bit, 2 for 4 with a double yesterday. And David Price, you didn't need to give him a 6-run spot to give him the advantage. He's already so lights out against the Tribe as it is, but it was all over but the dancing for him right there. As the Indians. By the way, speaking of pitchers today, Verlander. I don't know if this is good or bad for the Tribe, because Verlander has just got rolling a few weeks ago. Hasn't really had much of a chance to get into a groove, which could have perhaps worked to the Indians' advantage. But he's not playing today. He has a bulky back, and the Tigers pulled him from today's start as the Indians rolling now. Get you an update on that one here in just a minute. 216-539-7535. Getting ready to go to the phones. We're going to talk a ton more, you guys, about the Indians here, about Jason Kipnis when Dan Wismar joins us. Couple of other things real quick before I go to the phones, and we'll kind of brush on them now, dive into them here more. Cavaliers offseason officially now gets going as they've made the first step in the journey that will be the 2015-16 NBA championship. As much expected, they have activated the option that they had for Timofey Mozgov. It's nearly $5 million. It's 4 point. That will now be enacted. Mozgov in the fold, and I would suggest that now the next few months, the Cavaliers and Mozgov's people probably start working on a more palatable 2 or 3 year extension, try to make that thing a longer term deal, because I think the Cavs realize what they've got in that big man there, and I really believe that he's still an unfinished product too. I think there's a lot more to come from Timofey Mozgov over the next few years of his career, and hopefully the Cavaliers lock that up for the next few seasons, because next year, the last thing you want next year is I'm not even talking about money. You don't want to have a bunch of time bombs over the team, and by that I mean when you've got the pressure of several people whose contracts are 1 year or expiring or whatnot, and then you've got the pressure of needing to win the championship on top. Those time bombs just add to it, because now you start to wonder if guys' individual agendas start to overtake the team agenda. The less of those you got, that's what comes with long-term deals. And I fully expect, I think they'll be able to as well, get something worked out there. Cavs didn't give up 2 first-round picks to let Timofey Mozgov be a 1 or 2 year rental. I think they're going to work on that for sure. But that's the first move. Obviously, there's plenty more things still to come. A lot of people throwing out, what are they going to do tomorrow in the draft? I think that's going to be very interesting from a number of perspectives, from whether they're able to move the Haywood contract there, because they've got another month or so before they've really got to press to get rid of it. Right now, not a lot of people jumping up and down for it, but that is almost $11 million in salary cap relief for some team out there. They've also got the 24 pick. I'll tell you what, I think there's some good choices. Me personally, if you put me gun to my head, you said, Jerry, who do the Cavs pick tomorrow at 24? If they don't trade it, and of course you can't predict what the other 23 teams before them are going to do, but I'll tell you what, I could see the guard out of Louisville, Rozier, man. I could totally see him being a good pick at 24 for the Cavaliers. I think that he's got some issues, that turnovers I know was one that he had last year, but Terry Rozier, I'll tell you what, he could definitely be a spark plug type offensive energy energy guy coming off the bench there as the guard. And last year at Louisville, he was 17 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals a game. I'll tell you what, he's about a 40% shooter, 37 from 3, but he's super fast. His lateral movement is very good. He's good at creating his own shot, being a playmaker as well. He's able to get down, get into the hole. He's able to finish. He's a local guy from Shaker Heights, which of course has a little bit of appeal to me. And he plays some defense, man. He's another one of those guys that I think would fit right into what the Cavaliers do, and he could be great coming off the bench, being in that, 4th, 5th. It depends on how things shake out with J.R. Smith, where they go at the guard spot. But I could see him doing a lot worse than Terry Rozier, the guard out of Louisville. And we'll see. There's a lot. I saw some people. I was looking in the PD. DeLon Wright was somebody that people threw out there from Utah. Jerian Grant from Notre Dame. Some different speculation on guys. But I like Terry Rozier, man. He's a gritty guy. He's an energy guy. I could totally see him fitting right into what this team does and put him on a second unit with Tristan. Well, I guess that all depends on how they decide to go with Kevin Love and those kind of things. But we'll talk some more about that as well. I'm going to get Dan Wismar's thoughts on the draft when he joins us. DRuss, where does he go from the Buckeyes? We'll talk about all of that. Terrell Pryor signing with the Browns. Haven't even touched on that. He's going to come in and take a shot at wide receiver. But I'll go so far as to say he's already the second best quarterback on the Browns roster. I'm just going to throw that out there, and then I'm going to go to the phones and throw it to you. We're going to talk more about all of these things, you guys. But caller, you're up on the fix.
J-Rocc, Daddy.
Hey, that's my man LG. What's happening, baby?
How you doing, brother?
I'm good. How you doing, man?
I'm hanging in there.
I'm hanging in there, too. Indians are hanging in there, too. Just barely, though, man. I don't know about that.
Hey,
Bad
we're
start
only 70
to the
games into the season, J-Rocc.
Well, I'm with you. No. I'm with you. I'm not one of those giving up on the season. There's still a lot of games to play, but it doesn't matter. What scares me now is what makes you believe that it will not continue to be as frustratingly inconsistent as it is. That's the part that's bugging me, because everybody's letting them. They've got right now. They could be making up ground, and I mean, like I said, you're stalling around and saying you've got more time, and that's true, you've got more time. But Jason Kipnis is not going to stay red hot forever, and you're not able to take advantage of the softness of the teams around you, and one of the hottest streaks we've seen from a guy in decades here in Cleveland. That's what scares me, because what about Kipnis? He comes back down to earth, and you may not score a run.
Well, I tell you, J-Rocc, Daddy, we saw it in the last couple of seasons, the inconsistency of the Indians being able to produce some offense has always bothered me over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, what always bothers me even worse than that is a guy who pitches the baseball, strikes out 8 guys, and he can't throw the ball to the first baseman without creating an error.
That's maddeningly frustrating, LG. Right
it
there.
Is, it is, because you're throwing out a guy like Cabrera. He's not a speedster by any sense of the term.
You could have got 2
Take
on
your
that
time,
play,
throw
man.
the ball to first base and get the out, man. Like you said earlier in the show, you can't afford, especially a team like the Detroit Tigers, to give them extra outs. It just always comes back to haunt you.
Hey, we're giving them extra outs. Like, hey, Detroit, you don't club us over the head enough like a baby seal. But, I mean, you could feel it at that point. And the Indians, and this stinks because it's almost like a little kid talking about getting spanked by their big brother. You listen to the way Kipnis and some of those guys talked after the game, and I think it was Kipnis himself that said, we hang in there, and we're doing great in the games. You're going, all right, man, we can beat these guys, and you're digging in until the 5th inning, and then one thing goes wrong, you mess up on defense, and next thing you know, boom, 6-run inning, and you don't have a chance in the world at that point.
Well, you can't do that when you have an inconsistent offense. I mean, the only guy that's red hot, like you already said, is Jason Kipnis, man. Lindor's struggling at the plate. He's batting .206. He's got to find his groove. He's got to find out how to get around these major league pitchers. There's growing pains right now. Everybody wanted to see Lindor up. We got him up. He's a great guy out in the field. We got to have him start getting the bat a little hotter, and I think it's just a matter of time before his eye zeroes in on the major league pitching, and maybe he's going to make a contribution.
Well,
to
here's
the
the
Cleveland
thing: keep this in mind, is that when before he went to AAA, he was catching up quickly to the level that he was moving up. If you remember, when the Indians brought him up to AAA, he did not have the immediate adjustment to the AAA level. He struggled a bit before he started to get his legs underneath him, and it seemed like just when the Indians called him up, he was just really kind of starting to get comfortable hitting that AAA pitching. So there was an adjustment period. Now, before
that's
that...
what I'm saying. We're gonna have to wait a little bit and be patient to get his eye adjusted to major league pitching, man.
And remember,
because you know that.
I said this the other day, Larry, 80% of these kids that come up for the first time, get sent down at least once and brought back up. So between Lindor and Urshela, the odds are good that before this season is over, one of them may get sent back down. But you hope not. You hope that they're able to fight through it and get it. And at the same time, though, the Indians find themselves in that right now. They're not contenders, but they're not eliminated either. They find themselves in that middle ground, which really, whether they come back this season or not, what they do the next 6 weeks is going to determine what they do at the trade deadline. Do they start moving guys for future assets, or do they try to make a second-half run?
I think we're going to start making a run, J-Rocc. This is a second-half baseball team.
Always has
been.
We
saw it for the past 2 seasons. The Cleveland Indians aren't going to stay in the slump they're in presently. I think they're going to turn things around. And like I said, the proof's in the pudding. They did it the last 2 seasons. Look at the run they always make in the second half of the season. I just have a feeling maybe it's time for another closed-door meeting, and Frank Cohen needs to start putting his foot in some people's backsides. But something's got to change, and this team has been a team that does change in the second half of the season. So we just got to wait. We got to wait it out until at least the halfway point of the season. I think we're 11 games away from that. One's being played at 12:30 today, so we'll be 10 games away from the halfway mark momentarily before we know it. And we're going to have to make a judgment call at that time, J-Rocc, Daddy, and see what this Cleveland Indians team's capable of doing. I think people will be pleasantly surprised like every season. I just can't see him rolling over and giving up, man, especially with the halfway point coming right around the corner, J-Rocc. We'll find out soon.
Well,
but,
I hope you're right about that. They're getting ready to
thing I want to
head
talk
out on
about
the road.
is the Cleveland Browns bringing in Terrell Pryor. I think that's pretty funny. I think that's pretty funny that John DeFilippo is the guy that got Pryor's best quarterback year out of him out there in Oakland. He was responsible for 75% of the wins that season. They only had 4. But he did win 3 of those games. And you got to wonder. I mean, don't forget this guy is one of the few quarterbacks that threw for a couple 100 yards and ran for 100 yards in an NFL football game. You just got to wonder with Manziel over there if their thinking was maybe we bring Pryor in and he'll show this kid how to do it in the NFL. I'm not sure what they're thinking, but I just think it's a smokescreen seeing this guy's going to be a wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. Might as well bring Greg Little back if you want a wide receiver that can't catch the football.
Well, here's the thing, and I'm with you on that. I mean, to me, it's a no-risk deal as far as bringing him into camp, but he couldn't. He literally became like the 5th quarterback in the last 2 months in Cincinnati with a bunch of guys you never even heard of raising up on the depth chart. I mean, I've never been sold on the prospects of him as a quarterback in the NFL. We've seen limited bits of success and struggles as well when he was out there in Oakland. But, man, he just kind of washed out in Cincinnati. I don't believe – because coming to Cleveland, he did not come to Cleveland and then make the switch to wide receiver. This was something that he did predicating before he went anywhere, right after he left Cincinnati. That was his decision because I honestly believe that's pretty much his only hope, at least maybe as far as he feels, as far as getting back into the NFL, because he is an athlete, and so he can at least use that athleticism perhaps. And I don't know about mid-career changing to becoming a wide receiver, but to think that the Browns have plans on him at quarterback, that's not exactly what I meant when I say he's the second best quarterback on the roster. I think they'd be foolish if they had any type of plans in that way, but that doesn't change the fact that it's out there. And I do think that he's better. I mean, hell, he's better right now than Johnny Manziel is, and I will argue that point with anybody. I think that if you had to pick a backup quarterback and you had those two to choose from, you'd win more games if you went with Terrell Pryor. But I don't know how it's going to end up. I don't think it's a big deal because he's not under a big contract. It's just a come to camp and see what happens. But I will say that I saw what's his name from the ESPN, the beat guy, Pat McManaman. I saw something that he posted, a blog yesterday, and it's the same thing I've been saying for 2 months. I don't expect it to happen, but I do not rule out the possibility that Johnny Manziel is cut before the end of the Browns training camp. I believe if what I was told from people that watched him firsthand a couple of weeks ago, if that's true and he does not come into camp any better than that, he will be cut before the end of training camp. Don't rule that out. But I don't know that Terrell Pryor necessarily has anything to do with that. But he's already better than Manziel. I will say that. Now, Connor Shaw may be better than Terrell Pryor. T. Lewis may be better than Terrell Pryor. But Terrell Pryor is better than Johnny Manziel.
Well, you got to realize one thing, and I think that you do realize Pryor does show the grit that a guy like Mike Pettin likes. You heard the comments Pettin made after Connor Shaw played against the Baltimore Ravens last year, and whether he had a good game throwing a football or not, he showed that grit. He showed the intestinal fortitude that Mike Pettin gets turned on by J-Rocc, Daddy, because that's what it takes to play in the NFL, man.
Hey,
and I still question the hit that Johnny Manziel made. Huh?
I agree to a point, but I admire the grit of Matthew Dellavedova too, but I don't want him starting at point guard for the Cavs anymore in the NBA Finals. There is a difference between grit and talent, and while Connor Shaw showed a hell of a lot of grit and toughness, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's good enough to be an NFL quarterback either. I mean, we have a low bar.
You got to remember, J-Rocc,
we have a low bar, though, LG. Here in Cleveland, our judging of quarterbacks is low because all we want you to do is just be able to complete a pass at this point, and you're already ahead of the game. It's like, hey, can you complete 2 in a row? Ding, ding, winner, winner, chicken dinner. So I think that our evaluation of quarterbacks is a little bit skewed. We see Connor Shaw complete a couple passes, and we go, hell, that's better than Johnny Manziel. So are we looking for better than the second guy on the roster, or are we looking for really good enough to win in the NFL? You know what I'm saying?
Well, definitely we were trying to look for really good enough to win. The problem is, with some of the moves that the Cleveland Browns made, and I have to go back to drafting Manziel in the first. We talked about it. We talked about it a billion times. It's not going to change the fact. I mean, the guy definitely was brought in to generate the income of selling the Manziel jersey. But come on. Let's just say that the Browns were playing football on their practice field in Berea, and lightning came out of the sky and killed every other quarterback they have on the roster. A freak accident. If Johnny Manziel was the only guy left standing, we'll be lucky if he can make it for 3 games. If NFL,
Johnny Manziel's the last guy left standing, then I know God hates Cleveland, for sure.
I didn't even think about that when I was coming up with that analogy.
Man.
But seriously, I don't know what's going to happen with the Cleveland Browns. I think it's a very interesting move bringing Terrell Pryor to camp. Wide receiver, I just don't see it, J-Rocc, Daddy. I really don't.
Now, here's my thing. I will say this. He's incredibly athletic. He is durable. And he is a quarterback, which means he understands the passing routes and the passing trees and the different he understands it from a quarterback's perspective. So if he has some hands, which we don't know, we've never seen him attempt to be
according to him himself, he says no, he doesn't.
Okay, well, that's obviously Greg Little's issue, but if he can catch the ball, I can see where he at least gives himself a shot. But then again, this is the same guy, I will remind you, that 4 weeks ago said, if I'm not a quarterback, I'm dead in the NFL. So that's his mindset. That's
what I'm saying, because he also admitted back then that he cannot catch the football, J-Rocc. That's where that came from, where he was saying, if I'm not a quarterback in the NFL, I'm dead. Because he already admitted, I mean, I think it was a Seattle Tribune or some newspaper did an interview with him, and he said he cannot catch the football.
I'll be honest with you. I do think, though, that I would be lying if I didn't think that the Browns in the back of their head may go, what the hell? Maybe he throws a pass and catches somebody. At least for the next 4 weeks, this media that's looking for something to talk about while the Indians are struggling, they're not going to spend 4 weeks talking about Johnny Manziel and Terrell Pryor again, because I think that'll drive everybody nuts. But I think that was part of it, too, is the Browns figure, you know what? We could probably get a look at him, but we'll play up the wide receiver aspect of it, and this way it doesn't get the media all jumped. Because right now, everybody's looking for something to talk about because nobody cares who the Cavs draft tomorrow because they were just in the NBA Finals. But they had to make up something. But I'm with you. But I do think that, you know, it's a no harm, no foul, no risk move by the Browns, man. Bring him in.
Absolutely, J-Rocc.
They love Buckeyes here in Cleveland anyway, so let's see what Terrell Pryor can do. But I will say this. I mean, if you right now said, hey, you have to pick a backup quarterback to start the season right this second, I'd pick Terrell Pryor over the other two. Well, Thad Lewis is the one that I'm curious to see if he's any better than the last time he was here, because I did like his potential when he was here 2 years ago, and then he left and he got a chance.
And he played some good football with the Buffalo Bills.
Buffalo, yeah, he did good with Buffalo. So I think he may be the best other quarterback. He may just be the best period quarterback on the roster, although I'm hearing good things about McCown, you know, at least as far as getting a grasp of the offense and stuff. But yeah, Pryor.
Well, don't forget, McCown's no stranger to DiFilippo either.
No,
I mean,
exactly, and that's the other thing is think about that.
And you know, you got a guy that's coming in and taking an offensive coordinator job that's saying we're going to try to maintain the exact same kind of offense that we had, so we don't throw too many changes in the pile, get these guys more confused than they're already confused, especially with the two different quarterbacks between Hoyer and Manziel last season. You know, just switching back and forth between the two guys was a little bit of confusion. But what I got to tell you, J-Rocc Daddy, at the same time, you got a guy that's saying, oh, we're going to keep the system as much as it could be the same. You also have a guy that's bringing in people he's familiar with, whether it be Josh McCown, who he worked with once before, and now this Terrell Pryor move. Something smells fishy to me with this Pryor move, more so than a wide receiver. I just have to say that. And if John DiFilippo was not the quarterback or the offensive coordinator in Cleveland, I wouldn't feel so strongly as there's more to this Pryor thing than's meeting the eye right now.
I do believe that, but not in the way you're going. I think the other thing where there's more to it is it doesn't hurt to have another guy that knows what you're trying to do, knows your concepts, knows the basics of your system to help you try to install it. I mean, they may be using Terrell Pryor for their own use. They may have no intention of keeping Terrell Pryor on the roster, but DiFilippo may go, hey, this guy can help me. He can help me with Manziel and with Shaw and with Lewis to get these guys on the system. Can help me with the receive. You know, I'm just saying. Who knows? But it doesn't hurt the Browns. It's no risk, and we'll see what happens.
No, there's no risk involved here. I mean, obviously there's no risk. I mean, there's more of a risk involved of continuing burning first-round draft picks that don't turn out to do much in the NFL. But this is definitely a no-risk move, and you know what, J-Rocc? I mean, let's face it. It could pay some dividends.
You know where it could pay some dividends? If nothing else, he just spent the summer and the spring in Cincinnati's camp. So, you know, if I was a team in the division and I had an open roster spot, I'd bring him in too, just to, who knows, maybe you glean one or two things. Teams do it all the time. You ever notice how many teams sign a guy this week who played for the team that you're about to play this week, and they sign him for a week or two and let him go? It's because that guy is trading what he knows about that team for a paycheck for a week or two, and he'll give you a couple pieces of advice, and you try to get that one advantage that'll help you win a football game. So if nothing else, you bring him in, you get a look, he helps you a little bit, and he gives you a little bit of 4-1-1 on Cincinnati, and there you go. So we'll see what happens, LG. But my man, I gotta go. Good phone call, LGZ.
All right, J-Rocc Daddy, you keep it up. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
You got it, my man, LG from Cleveland Sports 360. Let's take a break, get you some news. Speaking of news and updates, Indians, Tigers, second inning, still no score here. Tribe had a shot, had a couple of runners on in the bottom of the first inning, couldn't get one across. No score with the Tribe and the Tigers. Let's get you some news, and then Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland joining us next. We'll talk some Cavs, Tribe, Browns, Buckeyes, and more here on The Fix with Dan Wismar next after the news.
The Sports Fix, the show that asks the question,
What you talking about, Lou? What you talking about, Lou? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Lou? What you talking about? What you talking about, Lou? What you talking about? What you talking about, Lou?
We'll be right back.
Guys, want to take just a second as we head into this break and remind you about the official business printing source of the Sports Fix, our friends at Signs and Ship. Signs and Ship, I'm telling you, Chris and Pam, they've taken care of me since day one, and they can do the same for you. Whether you're a small business that's already been established and you're looking to grow to that next level and expand your business, or perhaps you've got an idea that you just know is going to be a great business and you need to figure out how to brand it and how to promote it and put it out there, Signs and Ship is the place for you. If you need a logo, they can create one for you. They have a fantastic graphic designer. Business cards, signs, banners, yard signs, mobile advertising, anything you can think of that you need to promote your business, they've got it at Signs and Ship. The best thing about them, too, is each of their locations, whether it's the home base here in Elyria, Ohio that I work with, or their spots in Virginia, Florida, and Pennsylvania, it's all local sourced. Very important to me because we all understand that small business is the lifeblood of the community. So check them out, signsandship.com, or call Chris and Pam today, 440-323-6060, the home office in Elyria, Ohio. Signs and Ship, quality printing at affordable prices.
Hey, this is Scott Fujita, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
No football? No problem at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. From their awesome Wing Mondays to every single Cavaliers and Buckeye Hoops games in full HD, the excitement never stops. Every day of the week brings a different set of food and amazing drink specials. Fight fans, Harry Buffalo North Olmsted is the home for every UFC pay-per-view live on the big screens. And let's not forget their mouth-watering trademark, the Bison Burger. Nobody does bison like Harry Buffalo. The perfect combination of healthy and delicious. What are you waiting for? Get to Harry Buffalo, just outside Great Northern Mall today. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Man, do I love card night. You ready, boys? You got a king?
Go, fish dad.
Oh, come on. This is WWE superstar Titus O'Neil. The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Learn more at 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. Real time spent making real decisions, creating real victory.
I'm the greatest man in the world!
And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize. I mean, a really real prize. Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs.
The trophy's 12 feet high, and it is glorious!
Football, baseball, hoops, you name it, they have it. Plus, they have awesome draft kits and party supplies to make all your preseason activities the envy of everyone. If your league needs a ring, belt, or trophy, or you want to upgrade what you already have, there's literally only one place to go. If you're going to be a fantasy jock, do it right.
It's mine, the most magnificent belt ever created, and it's mine.
With America's fantasy sports superstore, fantasyjocks.com. Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Signs and Ship, the official printing source of the Sports Fix. Locations in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Florida. Find out more at signsandship.com.
News break.
I'm Christine Lisi. Here's what you need to know. Tom Brady's greatest ally during the more than 10-hour appeal hearing of his 4-game Deflategate suspension was the Patriots quarterback himself. That's what two sources in the room for the hearing told ESPN's Adam Schefter, with one calling it an A-plus performance. No timetable given for Commissioner Roger Goodell's decision, but ESPN's Sal Paolantonio expects a quick resolution.
I think that he realizes time is of the essence. You know, we're dealing with the Super Bowl champions and the MVP of the Super Bowl, Tom Brady, and they don't want this to linger through the summer and into the fall, that they want to get a quick conclusion to this.
Sal Pal on Mike and Mike. Baseball, Tigers right-hander Justin Verlander scratched from today's start with a back issue. Verlander didn't make his season debut until June 19th because of a right tri. Governors expected today to approve a change for next season, with overtime going to 3-on-3. Novak Djokovic and Serena Williams are the top two seeds at Wimbledon. The top seeds at Wimbledon, rather. Coverage of the opening round begins Monday at 6:30 a.m. Eastern.
This summer, stop watching the same old sports highlights and go to Buffalo Wild Wings. They're celebrating games from around the globe, highlighting can't-miss action from sports like soccer and rugby. Summer can be tough for a sports fan, but it doesn't have to be. Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports.
Now, back to the Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix Live. J-Rocc back with you here. I did not even play that intentionally because the Indians gave that one away in the sixth run, fifth inning yesterday. But they sure did, man. Like I said, as the Indians and Tigers sit here, tied at 0 here, looking at two complete for the Tribe, it looks like. We'll continue to update that, but man, you can barely beat these guys as it is. You can't get beat up the way you did. I keep thinking about it. I mean, I was talking to somebody here during the break as we were messaging back and forth, and man, you get Miguel Cabrera up, you got them juiced, you got the chance to get out of it, and you don't. And here the Indians sit. Is it going to be an entire summer of that? If so, it's a good thing I'm bald, because you'd be maddeningly frustrated very quickly. But there's still a lot of season to go. I mean, man, when you got a guy doing what Jason Kipnis is doing, you got to get on Superman's back and ride it. But unfortunately, one thing after another with the Indians here. Today's another game, another opportunity to beat those Detroit Tigers, and we'll see if they're able to get that done before they head on the road for 10. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk Cavaliers as well as the draft is looming here. We'll talk, speaking of the draft, Buckeyes, D'Angelo Russell, where's he going to go? Let's get into all of that and more. Maybe we'll even touch on Terrell Pryor with Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland and the Cleveland Fan. You guys can keep the conversation going on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Tweet with us at TheSportsFixCLE. Email us, TheSportsFix@AOL.com. I'm going to pretend I didn't see this question. Chase in the chat room asking, why did the Indians get rid of Atchison? Well, I can give you a bunch of reasons why. Atchison, to me, it was a 1 year too long type deal. I mean, you got a great season out of a guy, and it was so funny because as I get ready to bring Dan on, 2 or 3 weeks ago when he went on the DL, we were in different. I totally knew they were bringing him. I could tell they were bringing him back the way Terry Francona was talking about it. Dan thought they were cutting him loose when he came off. Turned out they did both. They brought him back, and then they cut him loose after a couple of bad outings. And Terry Francona yesterday talked about how tough of a move it was. You could tell he's got a very, very loyal spot for guys like Scott Atchison. But to me, that was one of those, you knew coming into this season there were certain guys with Shaw and Atchison and some of those arms in the bullpen that, you know, was going to go one way or the other the next season. And unfortunately with Atch, it went that way. And I mean, you know, you can joke about gray beards and veterans and players, coaches, but it's much like, hey, and I'm not saying the drop-off was as steep, but it's like Jason Giambi. You get that, you've got diminishing returns, and you get what is great for the value as far as last season, what you got, and then you try to squeeze that turnip just a little bit more, try to get that blood from a stone, and unfortunately, when it doesn't work, the follow-up season, you see some of the struggles you had here. But I'm not really surprised at all. I'm mostly surprised that Terry Frank, it took him a while, but that he finally was able to say, hey, I got to do it. And I've seen him doing more and more of that this year because I think he realizes that the Tribe's at a critical juncture of things here as far as a team that was considered on the up, and now they're not necessarily on the down, but they're kind of stuck in the middle, and they've got to figure out where to go because otherwise they stay stuck in the middle and blow a whole window of opportunity. Let's jump into all of that right now with Dan Wismar from EverybodyHatesCleveland.com. Dan, my man, how you doing?
I'm doing great, J-Rocc, my friend. You talk about not having any hair. I've got a little, but I've got a little bit less after last night. I know that.
Man, let me tell you, you were obviously watching, and I'm telling you, my timing couldn't have been any worse last night when it comes to the bad part of yesterday's game. I get settled in, and it's 1-1, and the Indians go down in the fourth, and here comes the fifth, and all right, here we go. And I look at my son, and I said, well, hey, look up. Things are looking good. Josh, my son, just won his baseball game, and it's the fifth inning. And the Tigers haven't beat the Indians yet because they put them behind the 8 ball so much. And you know that once they do, the game's over. Sure enough, as soon as I said that, I mean, you're watching it and you're going, what are the odds that we get a double play here? I mean, you know, you're figuring Cabrera's just going to do his thing. And then, boom, here it comes. There it goes. And you knew at that point in time, this ball game was over. And here comes 6 runs in avalanche, just like that.
It really was amazing, and you know, I wasn't watching it live. I was watching my At Bat app. I quick flipped it on to see the replay, and it was just such a bizarre play.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just the strangest play ever. He fields the ball cleanly, and then somehow actually goes through the throwing motion and ends up with the ball behind him. How he did that, I have no idea. But it was sort of a, you know, the game itself, I guess, I was looking at it and thinking about it as a little bit of a microcosm of the season.
Yes.
You know, just in terms of having your defense let you down, first of all, and having an inability, almost like it's in your head that you can't beat the Tigers. The fact that up until the 9th inning, the Indians had 10 hits and 1 run. I mean, that the failure to do the situational hitting and to hit in the clutch, the fact that it was a home game, all those things sort of combining to say, yeah, this is the way it's going this year, all wrapped up in one little 9-inning package. You know, after coming off a weekend where you scored 1 run in each of 3 games, you've come up with 5 and 3 now against the Tigers in 2 games and haven't been able to get a W out of that. So all those things just sort of making me think, wow, this is really emblematic of how the season has gone.
Yeah, emblematic, and I'm not trying to be that guy, but what has me worried now that has not had me up until this point? I'm all about plenty of season to go, but seeing as how they're barely hanging on right now with Jason Kipnis performing the way he is, what happens when the eventuality of him cooling off, it's going to happen. It happens to everybody. And that's the thing, is it's like that is the one toothpick propping this thing up right now offensively. And that's what scares me, is that if Jason Kipnis goes through a cold streak, we could see the Indians go through a bad several weeks where this season is over at the end of it.
Oh, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. You've got to have, I mean, the team just so far has not hit well enough to contend. You've got to believe that even if the starting pitching has been maybe not quite at the level that we expected it to be, certainly Kluber hasn't been, and when your ace is down, everybody's down. But even at that, I think the starting pitching has been acceptable. At times it's been, you know, quite acceptable, exceptional maybe. But this team hasn't hit. The thing that's bizarre to me, Jerry, is when you look at some of the statistics and you look at, I was seeing August Fagerstrom last night on Twitter talking about the Indians hitting with runners in scoring position. It's not bad in terms of their averages, in terms of some of the numbers of stats that you see. Like we were talking a week or so ago where the Indians had actually scored more runs than the Tigers and the Royals. You know, things like that you just you smack yourself in the head and say, how can this be right? With the results that we're getting, and it gets down to, you know, what Fagerstrom was also saying last night is they They're near the bottom of the league on BABIP, on batting average on balls in play. Hits aren't dropping. The example last night when Urshela comes up with a couple men on, 2 outs, and he creams the ball after a 10 or 12 pitch at bat, and really gets a hold of one and rockets it into the gap and goes and runs it down in the deepest part of the ballpark and for the 3rd out. I mean, batting average on balls in play, he hit that ball as well as he possibly could, and it's just a long out. So again, one of those microcosm things, that made me just shake my head and pull out a few more of my remaining hairs.
But that stat right there, that is one of the ones that I hold on to when I'm looking for reasons why I think there's plenty of time for the Indians to, as we saw, all it took was one good 14-game stretch there, and the Indians were right back in, within 4 or 5 games, but they were right back in the thick of things because everybody else cooled off, much like we kind of thought they would, but I just, when you think about, like you said, balls, the batting average of balls put in play, that has to even back out. Those are the ones where you go, okay, they're not getting the breaks, but then you watch them actually play and you stop looking at stats and stuff and you see times where you go, good baseball, but you see so many other times where you go, this is why you can't win back-to-back games. That stat, by the way, that I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you heard it, it's just amazing. Here we are nearly at the halfway point, with the exception of that 14-game, 15-game run there at the end of May. Only twice all season long have they won back-to-back games. I mean, just that's the definition of the cycle and the hamster wheel that these guys have been on.
Yeah, that's true. The inconsistency, the inability to put streaks together, and like you said, we've talked about it before, where all the numbers can look great, but when you watch the team and you watch them every day, and you ask yourself, is this team playing good, sound, fundamental baseball? And all this season, the answer to that question has to be no.
And how do they play Detroit?
Because of the situational hitting and defense and really everything else. On balance, the answer to that question has to be no. They're just not playing good baseball.
And Detroit specifically. Okay, 2 years ago, even if Detroit stomped the Indians and they had fight, they believed they could win. They put up fight and they would lose late. Like, remember, was it 2 years ago when they were making the playoff run? They had those games, Salazar pitching, where they'd go deep in games. And Cabrera would get you with a home run late, or J.D. Martinez would get you late. But Ben, it was different than the last couple seasons with the Tigers. And I mean, where they're at now, I honestly believe, forget it. Say the Indians go on a run and they go to the playoffs. Let's just fast forward to the end of the season. If the Indians met the Tigers in any type of meaningful anything, and I don't care if they win 60% of their games the rest of the way, this team, I would bet any amount of money in my pocket, cannot beat the Detroit Tigers. Not because they cannot beat the Detroit Tigers, because the Cleveland Indians players have no confidence. They don't believe that they even belong on the same field as the Detroit Tigers. Their body language says it. They have been beat up so bad. This is not a joke. This is not meant to be funny. They don't believe that they can beat the Detroit Tigers, and nobody can tell me otherwise.
Well, that's true. Although, last season they played them more competitively. They were 8-8 against them until the last series, which the Tigers swept. But the frustrating thing about the whole season, Derek, to me, is that the thing that happened to the Detroit Tigers is what you and I talked about happening to the Detroit Tigers. They've come back to the pack. They're essentially a 500 ball club. Why? Because they lost so much starting pitching that they haven't been able to dominate teams, even with their big stick lineup. They're as of the other day, until they came to Cleveland, they were about a 34 team, I think, at one point, before they won their last couple games. Yep. So, this is they came back. They regressed to the mean. They
check this out.
They didn't run away. Got off to a good start, and since they got off to that hot start, they've been playing sub 500 baseball. And why? Because their starting pitching is in trouble, having lost Scherzer, Porcello, these guys. So Smiley, they just don't have the starting pitching they did. Obviously, Kansas City's still out front, one of the best records in the American League, if not the best. But the Indians are missing the opportunity that presented itself to them by playing 6-7 games under 500 when they would be in second place if they were a 500 team.
Perfect example of that. Like you said, taking advantage of what's being given to you. You talked about them out-hitting Detroit and losing the game. Do you know that Detroit this season is only 3-24 in games where they're out-hit by the opposition? When they don't outslug the other team, they don't win. 3 yesterday. It was 2-24 before yesterday's game. That, again, is a opportunity just being handed to you that was squandered, and that's what makes it so frustrating. As you said, talk about, Detroit coming back to the pack, and I'll tell you what, I'm waiting for my screen to pull this back up here because I've got it is unbelievable. Even with the playing better last season against them, it is unbelievable the number that Detroit has had on the Indians since the start of the 2013 season here. My computer's giving me a bit of a hassle to pull this up here as I pull it up. But I believe 35-13 is the record of the Detroit Tigers against the Cleveland Indians since the beginning of the 2013 season, my man. And when you come to Progressive Field, it's even worse here as I zero in on the 35.
Wow, that's amazing.
35-13. Hold on, it gets better. 35-13 against Cleveland since the start of 2013. They've won 16 of their last 19 against the Indians. Since the beginning of 2013, the Tigers are 20-5 at Progressive Field, and they have won 11 of the last 12 meetings. I mean, that's a run of dominance, right? 35-13, 20-5 of it at the stadium. I mean, here, that's what, 15-8 in Detroit, 20-5 at Progressive Field.
That blows my mind, Jerry. I don't know what to say to that. That's just downright depressing to me.
I mean, I don't know of many other.
I didn't think it was that bad.
Me neither.
I knew that it was 8-11 total last year. But the year before, 2013, it was.
They mauled us.
15 and 4 or 16-3 or something like that over the whole season, and that's where that the double-digit differential comes into play, mostly in 2013 and this year, of course. So yeah, that's a very depressing figure.
16
and you're right,
of the last 19. That's the one that gets you too, because that's the most recent part of it. I mean, that's 16-3 in their last 19 against the Indians.
Yeah, amazing. And you're right. I mean. When your offense consists of Jason Kipnis and 8 guys named Joe who aren't doing anything, then you can't do it. The season Kipnis is putting together, by the way, is incredible. I just checked his numbers this morning, and obviously we know he's not leading the league in average. He and Miggy Cabrera keep jockeying back and forth for that over the last few days. But he's number 1 in hits. He's number 1 in doubles. He's number 3 in OPS. He's number 2 in on-base percentage. So. He's your all-star. He's your only all-star, I got to believe. You can't see any other Indian making the all-star team, can you?
Not a chance. I mean, I've thought about it. I mean, it's going to be Jason Kipnis and 7 Royals as far as I'm concerned. Looking at the way the voting's going to work out, it's going to be Jason Kipnis and the Kansas City Royals playing against the National League. But who else do they have?
Kipnis can, he's not going to be the starter.
Nah, well, what is he, third? He's third in the voting last I saw?
I haven't seen the voting, but
yeah, he's
who's
third.
The leading vote getter at second base?
I'm not sure, but he's third. Last I saw. I'll pull that up in a second. So he's going to make it, obviously, one way or the other.
Right,
but I do wonder.
Has to make it, but I just can't see any other guy making it. Even Brantley. There's just too many other good outfielders.
Brantley's down under.
When you've got the entire Royals outfield making it.
Well, that's what I mean.
And you've got guys like Batista and Trout and Cespedes and a whole bunch of other guys that are going to be the outfield backups. And Brantley hitting below 300.
That's what it
got a nice average, having a fine season. But I think he'll probably just be on the outside looking in.
I think his last couple weeks cooled him off because, if he was still, sitting around 320, 330, if he was still up in that area, then yeah. But now that he's at like 290, that cooled him off just enough to take any argument off of there. I can't see any. I mean, that's it. It's Jason Kipnis and bust, man.
Yeah, that's really the way it looks. So yeah, we were within a game of 500 3 times and couldn't get over that hump. And and now it's just starting to go the other direction. And, maybe this team can, do what they do, which is go on the road and play well. It's not happening here.
Omar Infante, by the way, is leading, I believe, for second base, which is amazing because he's batting .229 with 18 RBIs so far this season. But that is part of the complaints that everybody has with the Kansas City fans blowing it up. Matter of fact, baseball says they're working on addressing that. They said they already scrubbed out 65 million votes because they found repetitive IP addresses where people were cheating the system and using computer robots to cast all those extra votes or whatnot. But, matter of fact, I saw an interesting article about that anyway, not that long ago, about a bunch of players that are negative war guys that are looking to make the All-Star game because of the way the voting's breaking off. But think about that. Omar Infante has 6.5 million votes. Kipnis is right around 3 million, so he's still way, way back in the pack. Jose Altuve is second. He's also right around 6 million. But, yeah, Omar Infante
at least Altuve deserves it.
Right, absolutely. Infante has 6.5 million to bat .220. I mean, how does that happen, man?
Well, it happens by ballot box
by
stuffing.
The voting,
by the way,
yeah.
did you see Kipnis just extended the hit streak?
I did not, but there you go. Kipnis keeps it going again. That gives him, what is he, 1 game now off of the all-time Indians home hit streak, I believe. No, 31 is Trotsky's home hit streak, right?
I believe that is right. And the last guy to
he's
go
at 28.
30, he's at 28 now?
Yeah, 28 after today.
How many is he overall, about 19 or?
He's at 19 overall. He's at 28 at home.
Okay.
He's got now it's official. He is now alone for the second longest home hitting streak in Cleveland Indians history, and Trotsky's 31-game home streak is the last one left for him to be number one. So he's 3 games back of that. He was tied for second at 27. Now he's moved into his own into second place with 28 consecutive home games with a hit.
And Lindor follows that up with a hit, so they got a couple on for Brantley here with 1 out. So we'll keep tabs on that, but. I wanted to eventually get over to some Terrell Pryor talk. But what are you thinking? I did hear your caller LG talking about his doubts about that. I've got to agree with him. I'm skeptical about Pryor's having the skill set to be an NFL wide receiver. Pryor was an excellent runner as a quarterback, but he wasn't shifty. He wasn't elusive. He had one move. I always like to say he had one move, and that was the stiff arm. He never juked anybody in his life. He was sort of a straight-ahead guy, and a lot of times, straight ahead and looking for the sidelines as soon as he could find it. But great athlete. I think people used to joke about, or not joke about, but speculate that maybe he might be a tight end in the NFL, and I've got to believe that he's got a lot more potential as sort of an H-back than as a wide receiver. The other thing, Jerry, I'm looking at the Browns wide receiver core, and you can say what you want about the Browns wide receiver core being less than stellar or less than, scary. But they do have 2 veterans in Bo and Hartline that they're committed to, that are solid, experienced NFL wide receivers. And, then they've got their 4th-round draft pick, Taylor Mailey, who is going to make the team. They love Taylor Gabriel. That's 4. They're paying big money to Andrew Hawkins. That's 5. There's 5 guys right there that are going to make this team. They might carry 6. And most teams carry 6. Am I right? And you still haven't talked about Travis Benjamin or Marlon Moore, who they love as a special teams player. Where's there a spot for Terrell Pryor? I don't see it. They also have about 4 or 5 tight ends in camp that all of which they like, in Barnage and Hausler and their draft pick Telfer and this Malcolm Johnson that they like as an H-back. The undrafted player, is it Dibbs, the kid out of the Big 12 that was all Big
Emmanuel
12 from Iowa State. So, some guys that they like there, you don't see a spot fitting in there. I guess the only reason you could see keeping a guy like him around is so you wouldn't maybe have to carry a 3rd QB. He could maybe double as that in another spot on the roster. But much as I like Pryor as a player at Ohio State and everything else, I never really thought he would succeed as an NFL quarterback, and that's pretty much been proven out. But I have even less, faith in his ability to just have the skill set to do what NFL wide receivers need to do.
Oh, I agree. I don't think he makes this team at all. Not a chance as a wide receiver. The few guys that do make that switch, and I know that the guy that played for the Steelers was one a couple years ago, Antoine Randall L. He was one that did it. And, there's a few others. But they switch right away. They switch as soon as they go to the NFL and they become an athlete, whatever position it may be, a wide receiver, whatever. And I mean,
right. And I think Braxton Miller falls into that same category.
Yeah.
Of a guy who probably does have a future in the NFL at either running back or wide receiver. First of all, he's elusive as hell, and he's big. He's 6'2", 6'3", 215. That's good size for an NFL wide receiver, if not for a running back. And you can't catch the guy in the open field. You can't lay a mid on him in the open field. Pryor has never had any of that, what I call shake, just the ability to move laterally and evade and elude and accelerate quickly. He just doesn't have those attributes. And so that's why, a Braxton Miller or a Randall L. can make that conversion into the NFL where I don't think a Pryor has any shot.
No, I think one of the biggest. I think it's those couple of intangible things that I was mentioning there when LG called earlier. I think you get a little bit. You got the fact that the guy did spend the off season in a camp of a team in your division. You may be able to glean a few things from there. He's also familiar with your offensive coordinator and what he likes to do. So that's another guy in the meeting rooms, in the training camp that can maybe, if he just passes one worthwhile piece of advice to Connor Shaw or Thaddeus Lewis or Johnny Manziel or whoever it is. I mean, those are the things. And then if you catch lightning in a bottle, great. If not, we'll cut you loose at the end of camp. But I do think there's things he can bring to the table. And I mean, those are things I think for sure you'd be foolish not to think they were part of the reason why the Browns brought him in. But I do laugh at the fact that we can do all of it. I will say this. I like Ray Farmer. I like how he evaluates talent. I accept at the wide receiver position. I swear. And I don't mean you got to go out there and get the studs, but when you look at the fact, and I saw Pat McManaman point this out earlier this morning in an article I was reading, but you look at a guy like, cutting loose of Charles Johnson last year at the end of camp. And that was somebody, it wasn't like it was somebody that before camp a lot of people were saying, hey, this guy's got potential. And you look at him now, he's coming in as the hot pick to be the wide receiver that storms out of nowhere here. And we've seen other cases of that throughout the last few years, not just Farmer, but other Browns regimes too, where they cut loose these wide receivers that go on other places and do well. And then here we sit trying to find somebody to catch the ball.
Yeah, you're right. Real quick, just revisiting this Indian situation. Talk about your microcosm, Jerry. 4 hits in the inning, 1 run.
I mean, how do you beat Detroit like that?
Having Lindor get tagged out at second base on Brantley's single. And I'm not watching live. I'm following it on at bat. But I don't know what happened there. But Brantley singles, Kipnis scores from second, and Lindor is out at second. I have no idea how that happened. The right fielder threw him out at second base. Maybe he overran the base or something. I don't know. But 4 hits in the inning, 1 run, and that's how we do it.
Are we at the end? I know last I saw they still had 2 on with 2 outs, or has that inning come to an end?
Santana actually just got a base hit or did something, and we scored again. So not sure exactly what just happened, but Santana in play runs is what I'm seeing.
There we go.
So they're getting more than 1, but yeah, it looks like either 4 or 5 hits in the inning.
We'll continue to update you guys. Indians getting
things
going.
2-run double for Santana. There we go.
And that's key. Santana.
Some 2-out RBI hitting there. That's great.
Situational hitting. Get a team on the ropes and take advantage of it here, And there you go. Santana with the double. Brantley and Murphy score. Tribe up 3-0 here. And that's what you need to do against the Detroit Tigers. We'll see if they can grab this one and at least salvage the getaway game here before they come up on this 10-game road trip. Let's just start Baltimore here coming up Friday, I believe, was the beginning of that one. But we'll keep updating you on this one here. We talked a little bit about the Browns and Pryor. I want to switch over, talk a little bit of Cavs with you here. Tomorrow, not as important to many people here in Cleveland this year, but the NBA draft is happening. And I don't know if you heard me earlier, but my gut, unless of course the Cavaliers don't end up taking anybody, maybe they make a trade, which, by the way, if you're looking for the Cavs to trade that pick, they can, but they can't at the same time. They can trade the pick, but they can't trade it as a pick because they've already traded their first-round pick. They can't do it in back-to-back years. So if they do trade it, they have to pick a guy and then trade the pick after they pick the guy. But so keep that in mind. They can't just blatantly trade the number 24 pick. But if they don't do it,
and the Cavs have nobody but themselves to blame for that. The Ted Stepien rule.
Absolutely, the Ted Stepien rule. They did it to themselves, and here he comes and haunts us 30 years later. But but I think, and I don't know about you, but I think that Terry Rozier from Louisville is an excellent pick for the Cavs at that spot if they end up picking and if he's still there. And obviously, who knows if somebody would drop where I'd go, oh, you got to take that guy. But, man, that kind of fits. Big guys, we're pretty deep on the big guy aspect, man. We need a guard that can come off the bench. Rozier is explosive as an athlete. He can defend. He's got issues with turnovers that obviously would have to be addressed, but he's a jumper. He's got good hops. He's a finisher at the rim. So he's got a lot of the playmaking stuff that you want to see from your backup guard coming off with that second unit, and he's from Shaker Heights, so you got the local aspect of it too. I think he could fit right in, especially defensively coming off the bench. I could see LeBron loving having a guy like Terry Rozier coming off with that second unit.
Yeah, I've been reading a little bit about him, and of course, remember seeing him in the tournament this past year. How big is he, Jerry? What's the size on Rozier?
Let me pull up. I want to make sure I get his.
I know they're looking for some length and some athleticism.
He's
6'2",
6'2.5", 190-ish in that area is what they've got him listed at for the draft here. So they're not.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're seeing the kid people are talking about too is this Delon Wright.
From Utah. He's 6'5" or so. Yeah.
Yeah, he's 6'5". He's got the defensive abilities. See him talked about maybe as a guy that might be preferable to Rozier, and then also the kid from Notre Dame, who's also a good defender. I want to say Banks.
No, you're talking about Jerian Grant from Notre Dame.
Grant,
right?
That's right. Yeah, Torian Grant, who some people like as well. So clearly, backup point guard is a priority for the organization. I think that's an area where they know they need to get better. And more productive and get more points and out of that position and just more consistency out of it. And I think then they're also going to be looking at wings, at threes and stretch fours maybe that have length and athleticism and defensive ability. I think that's where it seems to be the consensus that they need to bulk up the roster. Because even the guys they have coming back, whether it's Thompson, even Varejao coming back, those guys aren't. The guys aren't going to guard Klay Thompson. Those guys aren't going to, run the floor with Draymond Green or whatever. Those kinds of guys. So Griffin has been pretty candid about where he thinks they need to go. And I saw the one Plain Dealer article recently talking about is it Hollis Jefferson, the kid out of Arizona, who sort of fits that profile of a long defender. May not have the greatest shot in the world.
That's Tristan Thompson, though, man.
Got the defensive ability, so it'll be interesting. I see them using the pick and trying to build some depth on that roster.
Hollis Jefferson to me is another Tristan Thompson type. Maybe a little better offensively, obviously. With what he can do, especially because he's got a good game close to the hoop. But Tristan Thompson was very underdeveloped offensively, but defensively, rebounding, that's kind of what he reminds me of there. I'll tell you, a lot of this too, and I don't know, I'm no genius that knows the answer here, but I do think, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this with you, is everybody that says that ridiculous statement, and I'm hearing it everywhere. Well, the Cavaliers, who cares about the payroll? Dan Gilbert can pay all that money in the tax. It's who cares? It's just a billionaire's money. Go ahead and pay everybody. I disagree with the thought that it's just a foregone conclusion. What do you do here with Kevin Love? And do you just sign all of these guys to max contracts? Because you can tell me that it's just Dan Gilbert's money all you want. That's not true. It's going to affect the type of players that you can add to your team. For everybody that says, hey, what about Monte Ellis? What about Dwayne Wade? What about any of these guys? Those guys don't play for the veteran minimum. They don't play for the exception either. Monte Ellis is not coming here for a $4.5 million 1-year contract. That's just not happening when he can get $20 million for 3 years out on the open market or whatever. So you can't sign those deals. You have to get a lot more creative. So I'm not saying I don't want Kevin Love. I'm not getting into that argument now. But to just brazenly go, it's just money. So what if the payroll is over $200 million? I don't care how high the payroll is either. I don't care about that part of it. But I do care that you don't lock yourself into a roster of 4 players and whoever else can fit under the salary cap around them, because that is a recipe for coming close and falling short and spending a whole lot of money to do it. I'm not saying get rid of Kevin Love, but I am saying that you're paying Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson max contracts to play the same position, which means you've got a max contract guy coming off the bench.
Yeah, that's true. Dan Gilbert can have all the money in the world, and it doesn't matter if you're tying the hands of your general manager behind his back and ending up with the kind of a lack of depth that was the team's undoing this year, because you're looking at a repeat situation of that if that's the way that you go. If you have all your money locked up in 4 guys, not counting Kyrie, that's a recipe for repeating the problems that you had this year when injuries decimated you, and you looked down your bench and you had some guys that were long in the tooth and past their primes.
Do you know, Dan,
because
that
they wanted to be around a winner?
Right, right there along those lines. Do you know that, assuming, let's just use the $16 million 1-year contract. Let's just put that out there for Kevin Love. But the Cavaliers, as it looks right now, not doing anything crazy with the roster, they will exceed the salary cap with simply Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, and Kevin Love. And that is not counting another player on the roster. Again, I'm not crying for Dan Gilbert. He's making millions and billions of dollars with bringing LeBron back to town. But the NBA salary cap does care about that stuff, not just the luxury tax. And so think about that. 3 players is your entire salary cap.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I just read the other day that I think Gilbert over the last 3 years has paid $43 million, I think was the number, in luxury tax penalties.
No, it was during the last 3 years of LeBron's time here before was what it was. When the last 3 seasons of, that's the stat you're talking about. He was $45 million that he paid into the luxury tax because of being the 5th, the 3rd, and the 2nd highest payrolls during those 3 years in the NBA. Yes, he has no problem spending the luxury tax. He'll pay, and now it's even worse because now you get taxed, I believe it's $2 for every dollar that you're over the salary cap. So if you're $40 million over, it's an $80 million tax bill that you're going to have to pay. That's not the part that worries me. It's the roster part that worries me, making sure.
Yeah, you're right.
That,
it's having your hands tied, having Griffin's hands tied, being unable to make moves and add players. So, yeah, and I've read, the articles about all these guys, and it looks now, based on everything I'm seeing, that Kevin Love would be foolish to sign the max deal now.
Right.
That he really should do the same thing LeBron's doing and sign the 1-1, and opt out, sign a 1-1 with his option for the next year, and wait till that salary cap gets jacked up next year in 2016.
Let me ask you something, Dan.
And wait then to do the long-term deal.
Let me ask you something there. And I know people, as soon as I say Phil Jackson, they're going to say, well, the Knicks stink, and I get that. He's got his own yard to worry about. But he made some comments about the modern NBA game in general and about LeBron and about and I do agree with his sentiment as far as the basketball aspect goes away when you get into a lot of that ugly one-on-one isolation type basketball. And I did find it comical that he talked about LeBron traveling when Michael Jordan was the king of the 4-step travel himself. But at the same time, hey, everybody in the NBA travels. It's just when they feel like blowing the whistle. But Along those lines, you look at the Cavs trying to build this team, and this is just, I'm curious where you are with this. I'm pointing fingers at LeBron, I'll point fingers at Kevin Love, any of these guys. And Kevin Love just got here, so I'm sure he's got less looking out for the other guy, the team type thing. And I'm not trying to be that guy. I know you got to look out for yourself, but there's a reason that the San Antonio Spurs are a special organization, and it's not just the names on the back of the jerseys. It's the fact that all of those guys, they don't give up tens of millions of dollars, but every one of them gives up enough to make sure that the team remains flexible, because like Tim Duncan says, hey man, millions are millions, you know what I mean? They make 10, 15, it's all millions, it's a lot of money either way, but you got to keep your team going. And as much as coming home sounded great, as much as I'm all in and I promise and all those hashtags sound great, the one thing that I don't see and that I'd love to see more of, and I'll point at LeBron as an example, is I get it that you want to get everything that you can get, but especially when you make more money in endorsements than anybody else makes for playing the game anyway, at what point do you start to wonder when everybody's got to say, hey, what we're talking about right now, 3 guys exceeding the salary cap, I know you all want to get yours, but how do you make sure that the team can function so that you can win 3 or 4 championships in the next few years? Because when I see the talk of, like last year, when LeBron's agents say, hey, LeBron will not sign less than a max contract. I get it. He deserves more than a max contract based on his value to the league, but being that steadfast that I'm going to get every penny that I get, guess what? Now Kyrie wants to get every penny that he gets, and Kevin Love wants every penny that he gets. It's the anti-San Antonio Spurs model. You're pulling together the talent, but they don't have the collective mentality to make the team work together financially. Are you seeing what I'm seeing, or what? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, it may be too soon to tell, Jerry.
And that's true. True.
LeBron was part of an organization, and you bring up the Spurs. The Heat did a similar thing.
Yes.
And they went to 4 straight finals, and they won 2 titles. People said that Riley could never put it together, that Riley could never pay Bosh and Wade and James and everybody, and yet they got down there and they juggled things and they reworked things and they did make it work. And LeBron was part of that. Now, I don't know if LeBron took a haircut himself personally. I think maybe it was Bosh and Wade and some other guys, taking a little bit of a haircut there. I actually don't know the ins and outs of the details of whether LeBron actually took one dime less than what he could have taken.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is the Heat was able to do it. LeBron was part of engineering that. Riley obviously deserves a lot of credit for that. But they did a similar thing. They said, hey, if we want to win this title, everybody's going to have to pull together, and we can't all play for as much money as we possibly can. That formula isn't going to work. So, and we're going to see how flexible some guys are. We're going to see how creative Griffin is and how creative Gilbert is in making something happen. So I'm thinking it might be too soon to pass judgment.
And I'm with you. What kind of throws a wrinkle into that for me is this changing salary cap of the NBA, and it's still being one more summer away, because it's almost like, and maybe this is the way it works for fans in Cleveland, but just when it looks like the promised land is coming back home, as far as the whole thing coming together, it comes together at a time where everybody has to hold off for 2 years before making any type of commitments because they want to get that big payday. So for the next 2, which was this past season and next season, you kind of get a whole lot of uncertainty in building your roster, and it's just the timing of it. Like, it just so happens that when things are coming together for the Cavs, there's this future pie in the sky 2 years from now that all these players are waiting for, because it would be a lot easier for the Cavs had they been able to do some long-term commitments, because that's what they do in San Antonio. They do a 4 or 5 year deal. They renegotiate every couple years, and they keep that thing moving. You can't do that when you're going 1 year to 1 year, but it just seems like, well, that's typical Cleveland, that just as we're trying to build something together long-term, there's a built-in function of the NBA that has got everybody looking individual for the next 2 seasons.
Yeah, you're right. That is unfortunate. But it also points to the trend that you're talking about, the me trend. I don't want to play for $16.7 million this year because I might have a chance to get $22.4 million 2 years from, that
Right.
kind of thing where it's all about me, how much I can get, and what am I going to do to maximize my earning potential. The average fan who's paying $100 or whatever to go watch a game has a hard time relating to a Kevin Love or somebody else. He just happens to be in the situation right now where me play for $16 million next year. You got to be kidding me. That kind of an approach to it, or I'm going to wait because I might be able to get millions more. And the average fan's going, $16 million isn't enough for you? Sorry, feeling bad for you. So anyway, that's the situation they're in, and you're right. It's a built-in thing, and everybody, and including their agents and the union and everybody else, is encouraging them to play their cards right and not lock in. It's foolish monetarily for them to lock into some long-term commitment now when the game changes entirely a year from now. So it's you're right. Right now, it doesn't seem to be playing in the Cavs' favor when they would very much like to stabilize things and create a situation where you've got a long-term plan for success, not necessarily a short-term one.
Right, absolutely, and I will say this in LeBron's defense, and I know Michael Jordan went through a very similar thing in the last few years of his career. You have a different pressure, and I don't mean like just a motivation, but there's an actual pressure as far as what many consider the best player in the game, or at least the biggest name in the game, the biggest star in the game, whether you want to consider him the best physical player or not. There's a built-in pressure, and rightfully so, from the players' union to have the best player in the game be the highest paid player in the game, because you're setting the market for everybody else down below. So when the number one player in the game is playing for 40% less to play for his team, whether it's the Bulls, the Cavs, whatever it is, then you're retarding the market for everybody else. And so there was always that pressure. And if you go look, those last few years that Michael Jordan played for the Bulls, he played one-year contracts, and they were the highest one-year contracts in the history of the NBA at the time. I think they still are. He played for $30 and $33 million his final 2 seasons with the Bulls. Kind of a way to pay back for all the years that he was playing for $2 and $3 million. But that was the pressure, and LeBron has it too, because you do have, and I put myself in that situation. That's tough, because you do realize that it's hundreds of players underneath you that are part of the groundswell beneath that. So that is something to keep in mind, that, maybe personally LeBron or whoever the number one guy is, they may be cool to say, hey, you know what? I make so much money selling Nikes and Kias that I'll play for $5 million a year, and you can go ahead and do whatever with the salary cap. But the union goes, hell no, you won't. No way, man, because you're the number one player in the game, and if you don't play for $20 million, then how is this guy going to play for 15 and this guy going to play for 10? So that's something that I think you're unfair if you don't keep that in mind too, that there's a built-in pressure on the top guys to get as much as they can, for the other players to get as much as they can, and then they're the ones that have to, kind of deal with that too. So there is that as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the points you were making earlier about how LeBron is valuable to the league, and he is valuable to the league, and he's valuable to the other 30-some franchises in the league. And at some point, I know it's been talked about before, that if you're filling your arena, in the case of the Eastern teams 2 or 3 times a year, and the Western teams once a year, when LeBron James comes to town, well, maybe these other franchises ought to be ponying up a little bit of his compensation.
Hey,
I don't know how that would ever work, but it's been talked about before that the big marquee stars in this league should be compensated by perhaps some teams other than the one that they play for, because they all benefit from him being on the court.
Well, that was how they almost did that with Michael Jordan when he retired. The first time when they went to the lockout, there was literally a meeting with NBC and the league where they were going to pay Michael Jordan to keep playing basketball, man, because he was worth so much to the league. Same reason that they paid him his full salary the whole time he played baseball. He was getting paid every week that check from the Chicago Bulls, because they knew they needed to keep that going. But yeah, they talked about it before, and that's something that, and who knows, with future CBAs, they may find better ways to distribute merchandise and different types of things that way as well. Who knows? I don't know how that works with the NBA. I know in the NFL, which is actually surprising, many people don't realize that the individual teams and the players, they don't get the individual. It's all a collective revenue for the merchandise. So even if 1 million Johnny Manziel jerseys fly off the shelf, that check gets split 32 ways, and it doesn't just go to the individual team. Same thing with LeBron jerseys or whatever. So,
first big league homer for Francisco Lindor.
There we go. Hey,
How
Indians said, you know what? They seem to get good at this lately, getting their butt kicked in the first 2 games of a series, and then coming out there and
salvaging the third one.
Yeah, and usually they win it going away, where you're like, well, they were pretty mad about the last 2 days. Why couldn't you have got mad yesterday, man? But
be mad every day. Come on.
But hey, while we're talking NBA, we were talking Cavs, the draft, all of that, Buckeyes too. Let me jump in there. D'Angelo Russell, where do you think DRuss ends up going? Of course, the freshman from Ohio State, one and done. A lot of talk there with the first couple of picks. You got Minnesota, the Lakers, Philly. A lot of people think Philly is the foregone conclusion. I got to think that's where he ends up too. But what do you think? Where do you think DRuss goes?
Well, didn't he say the other day, didn't he come out, or either he or his agent say that he wasn't really interested in playing for Philadelphia?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what I heard, that there was some noise about that. At least I don't.
But I saw some speculation. I saw speculation that was a throwing the dogs off the scent kind of a thing too, because there was starting to be a belief that Philly was zeroing in on him. So I don't know. He seems like the kind of guy that he just seems like a Philly basketball player. I don't know if that makes sense.
That may be. I know. I've seen a lot of people projecting him at 4 to the Knicks. I don't pretend to have any inside info on that, but I saw too a quote today. Did you see the Pitino quote? I think it was Rick Pitino who said that he felt that D'Angelo Russell was the best passer he had seen in 30 years since Magic Johnson.
Wow. No, I didn't see that.
And I thought, wow, you've never seen LeBron James? I don't know. Maybe it's hard to say, think that he just blew right past LeBron James or Larry Bird for that matter. But the best passer he'd seen in 30 years. So come out of college. So I guess that would preclude LeBron James. He never came out of college. But I thought that was certainly high praise and maybe a little bit of hyperbole. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. But, I mean, he's definitely a very gifted offensive player, passer in that, and he can just go and add to those assets. I was talking to John McMullen, like, last time he was on the show a month ago or whatever, and he's up in that Philly market and follows the Sixers and all that. And I was talking to him, I said, what are those guys doing? Because they're piling up talent, but it's so scattershot, man, that I don't know what they're doing over there in Philadelphia. But,
well, you can see how any player coming out right now
doesn't want to go there. Hell no.
I don't want to play. I don't want to play for those guys. They're a terrible organization right now. Yeah, you're right. They're stockpiling talent, but there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason.
No, if I was Russell, I'd rather go to – I mean, think about it, too. You're sandwiched right in the middle. Lakers are second. The Knicks are fourth. And you'd love to go to either one of those places because those are your top two, markets as far as the media and the size of the market and all of that stuff. And here comes Philly in the middle, who's happy to win 17 games a season or whatever. And I would hold a press conference and say I don't want to go to Philly either. I saw some mock drafts, and I'm not the biggest fan of those, as people know. But I've seen a lot of people. Where do you got Cauley Stein going? Because to me, you're talking about a 7-footers don't grow on trees, man. But I've seen a lot of mock drafts that had Cauley Stein outside of the top 10, and I don't see how that's possible.
Yeah, and I again, like you, I don't claim to be, a great NBA talent evaluator. Some people think, you played on a team with a guy like Towns and some other big men and in a system with some other great talent all around you, maybe you look better than you actually are. Maybe maybe they're the guys that really break it down and look at the talent and the skill levels and the different attributes. Just don't think that he's all that. But you're right. You can't teach height, and everybody had him going either 2 or 3, and you got to figure that the longer the scouts look at a guy and kick things around, and if he starts to drop, there are reasons why he's dropping, and maybe they don't have anything to do with on court ability. Maybe it's other things outside off court, but I have no idea about that. But that's surprising because it looked like certainly everybody thought he and that Towns and Okafor were the top two, and then you had a couple of other players in there, but I think everybody had Cauley Stein going top 5, 6 anyway. So yeah, that's a little puzzling. I don't claim to know why that is, though. I don't really have a beat on that.
It'd be interesting to see where he ends up. Who's the one? The guy from the Congo, Emmanuel Mudiay, who's climbing up everybody's boards. Man, I've seen him as high as going like 4th to the Knicks there, and that's one of the things too. Is there's like 3 or 4 international guys that could probably end up being in the top end of that draft. It still feels weird to be here in Cleveland and be talking about a draft, man, and be nowhere near the top end of that thing. You're just going, hey, well, let's see who could end up falling to us here as we get down there. I'll tell you what, somebody that I saw, and it just doesn't fit a need for the Cavs, but somebody that I've seen in so many of these mock drafts out here be right in the area where the Cavs are drafting is the big guy from Louisville, Harrell. I think that he's got a potential, a big time potential as just an athletic big man in the NBA, man. And unfortunately, the big guys is kind of the position where the Cavs have some depth, and you got to think that they're going to go with some type of a playmaker and a guard, whether it's a point guard or a shooting guard or a combo there.
It does look that way. It would be a luxury if they were able to go after a developmental big man, but I don't think that the circumstance finds itself, in that spot right now. So that would be a big surprise. Although, like again, you can't teach height, and you can't have too many bigs. They're going to be spinning off a couple of guys that have been taking up bench space, Haywood among them. But and who really knows, Jerry, whether we'll ever see the old Anderson Varejao again. Achilles injuries are so bad. I mean, you look at guys like Ryan Howard, and obviously a different sport, but he's not the same guy as he was before the Achilles injury. And I've known guys personally that have had that, and you're just he's always going to be a step slower. That's the biggest thing is quickness and acceleration and those kinds of things. They just go away. And of course, he's not getting any younger anyway. It's just, in other words, you're looking at having some possible attrition, if not next year, certainly maybe the year after, where you're pushing the end of your career.
Oh, I agree with you, absolutely. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan. Everybody hates Cleveland. Joining us here, talking about the Achilles. I mean, with Varejao's style, that is. That's definitely something to wonder about. There is how much of that is going to sap what makes him the wild thing, what he brings to the table there, and that's going to be interesting to see when he bounces back. Man, I'll tell you what, a lot of fun again. Not so much. Well, today the Indians, but not so much the last few days watching the Tribe. Tribe's up. I've got 4-0 here through 5. Is that the
yeah? That's right.
Score?
That's right. Brantley doubled after the Lindor homer, but they couldn't get him home, and we're through 5 at 4-0. So Carrasco's only given up 1 hit, so that's not a bad outing through 5 innings.
And you know what? He's one of the only 2 Indians, Salazar yesterday being the other one who's even beaten the Tigers this season. So Carrasco has been he's probably been, I'd say, the most effective Indian starter this season against the Tigers by far. Yeah,
it sure looks like that. Got a nice record, coming up. He could, 6-4, I guess is what he is. Having a good first half. He's kept him for a while there. He had as many decisions as he had starts. And there was not a lot of no NDs in there. But he's either winning or losing it for you. But that means he's usually going 6, 7, 8 innings, which is a good thing.
Very good thing. Real quick before I let you go, Dan, who do you think is number 1 overall tomorrow night? Do you think it's Anthony Towns? Or you think it's J-Rocc?
I think from what I've heard that they are locked in on KHE, as they're calling them.
Yeah.
I think that makes a smart pick, and it makes the Timberwolves a pretty scary looking group.
Think about
doesn't
that, man. I mean, and they can thank the Cavs, by the way. Minnesota will gladly take your thank yous for the next 5 or 6 years as you guys are replacing San Antonio and Golden State theoretically atop the West. Because if you can't, there's something wrong with you because they're set, man. That's going to be scary. By the way, do they ship Anthony Bennett? They're shopping him. There's word. Who did I see maybe interested in him? Boston may be interested in flipping perhaps a draft pick for him. I think Boston's got like the 3rd pick in the 2nd round or something that they may be willing to flip.
Yeah, I saw that they are shopping Bennett. And the other thing, when you get it back to Kevin Love, if the Cavs are worried about PR, they ought to really be, that may be part of their decision process. If people are going to look back on that situation and say you traded Andrew Wiggins for a 1-year rental of Kevin Love, that's not going to look too good on the GM's resume. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. But
you know what?
Certainly, Wiggins is tearing it up.
I want to throw a point just out there. I made this point to a buddy of mine. And him and I are very much in the boy, we were stupid for getting rid of Andrew Wiggins. And I'll say that now, coming off of the finals. I said it all season. I said, boy, I don't care if they win the title or not. They'd have won 5 in a row if they'd have kept Andrew Wiggins. But anyways, we were just talking about that. And a buddy of mine, we were just looking ahead at that, man, and thinking about the Cavaliers and that trade. Oh, guy still kicks me in the tail, by the way, to think about that. But
maybe what the final upshot of it will be is that LeBron James is considered a great NBA coach, but he's not considered a great NBA general manager.
Well, that's kind of where I was going.
If he was the guy that insisted on doing the Love deal when maybe the front office wasn't quite so enthusiastic about it.
Well, thank you. That's my point, is what I was going to say is what you just said is everybody learns, even if you're the best at what you do. And everybody says and believes and knows that LeBron really wanted the Cavs to make that move and et cetera and so forth. And, well, hey, he's supposedly here for the long term, and he would like to win a few championships while he's here in Cleveland. And although, by the way, I did see a terrible article. And look, I understand that there's a lot of people that criticize LeBron for things off the court, on the court, etc., whatever. But one of the ones I saw, and I said, boy, what a terrible narrative this is. Although it's true, and I do agree with the sentiment of it, even though I don't believe that he looks at it this way. As I saw an article that basically summed it up, belittling his return to Cleveland. It was that he traded winning multiple championships for just being – everybody will just be happy that he wins one in Cleveland and then he can go on and retire. And all he's got to do is spend the next 4 or 5 years chasing one ring instead of chasing rings every season. I said, did you not watch – how bad they tried to win the NBA Finals, man? Let me just tell you, I disagree with that statement.
That's about as silly an observation as the one that LeBron would take the consolation prize of the Finals MVP if they didn't win.
Being the MVP. I'm like, get out of here. He doesn't want that.
That's just hilarious.
Going back to the GM thing, even if that's true, and he did lay the thumb down on the Cavs and said, make this trade, you don't think he's sat back now and is doing the same thing we're doing? Because not everybody is unable to see their own mistakes. And I do believe, whether he'll ever admit it or not, LeBron is definitely the kind of guy that sits down and does a self-evaluation. Maybe he doesn't get all of his mistakes evaluated, but he looks back and goes, damn, maybe we jumped the gun on that thing too. And I'll bring up an interesting point. David Griffin, one little line that he slipped in during his press conference last week was about how much more he learned in the last 6 months about how to build a team around LeBron James, because now he's seen it firsthand and he learned some interesting things about the type of players you want to put around LeBron James. So I believe that LeBron and David Griffin and the Cavs now have a much clearer idea than they did 10 months ago how they want to build the team around LeBron. And now you have to deal with Kevin Love being a part of that. Do you recoup your assets or does he go forward? I don't know. But I think lesson learned. And I think LeBron, in truth be told, 5 years from now will go, yeah, well, that was one where we made a mistake. But you move forward.
And it may just be, Jerry, that the mistake being we thought that Andrew Wiggins was a great future player as a developmental prospect. I think maybe they underestimated how good,
how quick
soon.
he could do it. Yeah,
You know, and when you see him go out and dazzle and win the Rookie of the Year or whatever, and just be the man up in Minnesota in this rookie year, then you're going, oh my, didn't think it could come that fast and that well.
See, I did. I was a Wiggins guy, man. I was all sold on Wiggins.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, a lot of people thought that could happen, and maybe that's where the judgment was a little bit off by Mr. LeBron, the GM.
Think about the defense. I'm just going to end our conversation on this. The Cavaliers were an amazing defensive team in the playoffs. Imagine Andrew Wiggins playing defense with those guys, the level they were at by the end of the season. They would have suffocated. They did suffocate teams along the way. But, I mean, for as much as Kevin Love extends you offensively, Andrew Wiggins constricts teams defensively. The Cavs would have been a vice. They may have been the best defensive team the NBA's ever seen. I'm just saying, man.
You're right.
I'm a defense guy. I get excited, as you can tell, about defense. That's great if we can score 115 points a night. I grew up in the era of Phoenix and Golden State scoring 160 points a night and never winning crap. So scoring points doesn't do it for me, man. I'm a defense guy.
I'm with you.
All right, Dan.
Well,
good stuff
I'm
here.
gonna have to get going, Jerry.
Absolutely. You have a good one, my man, and we will catch up next week.
Thank you much, Jerry. Have a good one.
You got it. Dan Wismar, my man from Everybody Hates Cleveland. You guys can check him out. EverybodyHatesCleveland.com, and he's here every week on the Sports Fix. Let's take a break. Come on back. Final segment, setting the stage and getting you ready for the rest of the day. Indians continuing to look good here against the Tigers. We'll update the score on that. 4-0, top of the 6th. We'll be right back, wrapping things up next here on The Fix.
The Sports Fix, your choice for intelligent talk.
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Intelligent talk.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good, though.
It could have been a lot better.
I didn't really like it.
These guys must be on the wrong station.
It was pretty terrible.
It was bad.
It was awful.
It was terrible.
Get him away!
Hey, boo!
Boo!
The Sports Fix.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
It's the Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize. I mean, a really real prize. Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs. There's literally only one place to go. FantasyJocks.com.
In 50 feet, turn left. Why are you driving so slowly?
After a few drinks, I'm taking it slow.
Well, you're not fooling the cop behind you.
What?
Get ready to pay in 0.1 miles.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
The Sports Fix is now available every day on the world's largest internet radio service, iHeartRadio. Download the free iHeartRadio app, subscribe to the show, and get your fix.
Hey everybody, Listen up.
Listen up, guys.
Hey, guys, listen up.
No one should ever hit a woman.
Not their wife, not their girlfriend, not their date. No woman should have to fear violence.
Especially not from someone they know and trust.
But that's the reality for too many women.
We have to change it.
It's up to each of us, because even one is too many.
Violence against women hurts all of us. Growing up, I was ashamed and afraid of my father when he abused my mom.
The worst abuse of power is when a man raises his hand to hurt a woman. We all have to take responsibility. So if you see someone threatening a woman, step up, speak out, and get help.
Dating violence hurts all of us. So step up and help end it. Because one is too many.
One is too many.
One is too many.
One is too many.
End the violence. Because it's wrong.
Because one is too many.
Hey, you guys are rocking with Reggie Germany, former wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills and Ohio State Buckeye. You're rocking with the Sports Fix.
Welcome back, guys. Wrapping things up. J-Rocc back with you here. The Sports Fix, rolling into our final few minutes here. Heads up alert, not in the studio tomorrow. Have a business meeting tomorrow in the early part of the AM, so we will be preempted. We will be live, wrapping up the week Friday. Jonathan Knight, sports writer extraordinaire, in the house as always. Mike Brandenberry from DidTheTribeWinLastNight.com. He'll be here Friday. Jeff Gorman from Browns101.com will be here. We're hitting all of the bases, loading them up and knocking them in on Friday, getting you ready for the weekend. And don't forget, Monday coming up just 5 days from now. Live in studio, Jonathan Knight talking about Major League. We're going to have some fun talking some Indians and the making of Major League and the franchise of some of the, well, one of the greatest baseball movies of all time, and then a couple of sequels. And we'll talk about all of that and be able to take your calls. You'll be able to get in and talk to Jonathan Knight, and we'll even give away a copy of this great book live on the air on Monday. Can't wait to have you guys here with us for that. Don't forget, out of the studio tomorrow, Thursday, back live Friday, wrapping up the week. Indians, speaking of wrapping up, as we wrap up the show, Tribe 4-0 on top of the Detroit Tigers. Bottom of the 6th inning right now as the Tribe put a 3 spot on the board in the 3rd, tacked on 1 in the 5th. Gomes up to bat right now for the Indians, last I saw, as Francisco Lindor hit his first Major League home run in the bottom of the 5th off of Farmer to extend that lead. And good to see the young man get going. He's 2 for 2 here today, and he's got that first homer of his career. Also has a walk. He's gotten on base all 3 times today. Jason Kipnis with a hit, as we mentioned, extends that hitting streak, and the Tribe behind Carlos Carrasco. Only 2 hits through 6 innings thus far as he's taken on the Tigers. Indians looking to improve to 33-38. And 15-23 at home. They lead 4-0. Hopefully they can bring it home. Hopefully by the time you're listening to this, they've already brought it home. And of course, many of you guys listen throughout the day, and the Indians will be off tomorrow. When we're back here on Friday, we'll start previewing the weekend series. We got the 10-game road trip coming up as well, you guys. Tribe now up 4-0. Hey, we were talking about the NBA draft there with Dan Wismar just a minute ago. It looks like a new proposal here that is being adopted, and it could go into effect as early as this coming January. The NCAA may change and allow underclassmen now to go back to school after they've declared for the NBA draft. Remember, as it stands now, once you have declared for the draft, you become ineligible and you are unable to go back once you make that official declaration. That is the current rules in place. Under the new proposal that the teams hope to have in place by January, the NBA will have an early entry deadline of late April for you to enter early if you're not a graduating senior, and they will still keep an official withdrawal date of 10 days before the draft. If you withdraw up until that point in time, you can maintain your eligibility. After that, the NCAA will then move its own deadline up a bit into the late end of May, again, continuing to open up the window for players to test the waters, find out what their status may be for the upcoming draft, and then pull back and go back to college if they decide that that's what's best for them. I'm interested to see what the draft holds, if the Cavaliers are able to perhaps make a move with that expiring contract of Haywood there, or what they do with the pick. We mentioned several guys that are possible. I want to see where DRuss goes here as the Buckeye makes his leap into the NBA. We'll find out all of that tomorrow, talk about it on Friday. Pete Rose, real quick as I'm wrapping up, I want to talk to Jonathan Knight. Him and I have had some interesting Pete Rose talks over the years, but now evidence comes out from matter of fact, it didn't even come from Pete Rose evidence from back when he was investigated in the late 80s there by the Major League Baseball itself, but through some mob trials now, it's come out that evidence in other trials has been linked together. They've got betting sheets. Now, remember, Pete Rose always stood on the stanchion of, I didn't bet on my own team, etc., so forth. Well, it turns out that there's proof that that is not correct, and that he was weaving a web, as they say, of deceit there, and it's just another thing to bury in the pile. And Pete Rose, but there's many people. See, that's the line, and I've always said, hey, he says he did this, didn't do this. It's almost like saying, well, I only committed this much of a crime, etc. But whatever your belief, this goes to a credibility issue. There's many people that have said Pete Rose lied then, he lies now, he continues to lie, and he's stood behind, I lied before, I'm not lying now. Unfortunately, you blow this facade off, and it becomes a credibility issue for a guy that had very little credibility to begin with. We'll talk some more about that, you guys. We'll talk Tribe. We'll look ahead to the weekend, talking Indians, Cavs, Browns, and so much more on Friday with you. Same bat time, same bat channel, live at noon, baby, right here across the Sports Fix Radio Network. We love you, Cleveland and beyond. Go Tribe. Enjoy the Thursday, the beautiful weather here, and get on back here Friday. We'll see you at noon, baby, Friday, right here on The Fix.
Bravo. Yeah, you hear me everywhere, but it's only one of me. Let me make that very clear. Yeah, I'm from that terminal. You can see the lake from here. Faith in my teams, we keep getting closer every year. But we got the king, though, so hopefully we overcome. Yes, I have a dream, and I know I ain't the only one. Armadale tried to steal my heart, but we brought it back. Thanks to Cleveland Clinic, now they call them Kiss the Cardiac. Rock Cars, Science Center, Tower City, all of that. Warehouse District, Euclid Corridor, and all the flat. You know that I'm a Tribes fan, and I love Slimans. Crockett Park's the perfect place for me to spend some time in. Baby, this is Cleveland. It is so much more to us. You can even go to Severance Hall to see an orchestra.
In Cleveland, we rock all